And can everyone see the closed captioning? Could somebody maybe indicate in the chat if you all can see that as well?
I'm going into noise cancellation.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. and we are going to start off with a land acknowledgement. So the Mount Allison Students Union operates and carries out its work on the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the Peace and Friendship Treaty, which these nations first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of land and its resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey title and established the rules for what was going to be an ongoing relationship between nations. We, the staff and members of the SAC, pay respect to the elders past and present and the descendants of this land. So we're going to move on to our first item, approval of the agenda. So I'm seeking a mover to pass the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Minoka McKenney, and seconded by Councillor Nolan. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any comments, questions, concerns on the agenda? Okay, so we have no comments or concerns. So we are going to pass this if it is undisputed. Awesome, perfect. So approval of the minutes is our next item. Unfortunately, we did not receive the minutes prior to the due date for this council meeting. So the minutes from our October 3rd meeting will be presented and approved at our next upcoming meeting. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Minoka McKenney.
Madam Chair, just so everyone has a little background, I wanted to introduce our presenter tonight because, well, this is our first presentation that we're having at SAC this year. So I'm very excited about this, especially with the project that is happening. So Dr. Jeff Hennessy will be talking to us tonight. He is the Provost and Vice President of Academic and Research at Mount Allison University. He'll be talking about the proposal that you see on your screen today that was distributed ahead of time. This proposal is about a first-year foundational course that has gone through an academic planning working group this year. As some of you may remember from summer council, and some of you will hear in a later council meeting, first-year foundational course or just overall foundations for first year has been is a advocacy recommendation this year for the MASU, at least in the academic portfolio. So this is something that I'm excited to see coming through and to see initiatives like this. So without further ado, I want to hand off the floor then to Dr. Hennessy, and I'm excited about the discussion afterwards and feedback that everyone can give to Dr. Hennessy as well. This is a great opportunity for everyone. So yes, off to you, Dr. Hennessy.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the chair and thank you to all the counselors for inviting me to your meeting. Just to say, I'd be happy to attend any meeting where you think a discussion would be useful to your work, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. I know some of you, I've worked with a few of you in the past year. I've only been here a little over a year, so I'm fairly new to Mount Allison, but I do know I have worked with some of you, and the rest of you hope to meet you in person at some stage when we get to that stage. Hopefully you all saw the brief proposal that's in front of you and had a chance to kind of look at it a little bit. It's a proposal for a new course, a new kind of first year foundation course, and this was created by the academic working group. So we have this academic plan that we're working on. There's 12 different working groups that are made up of faculty, staff, and students. And one of the themes of the academic plan is the first year experience. And so this working group on the first year experience discussed some of the things that we were concerned about for new students. And we decided that it would be good to try to create a common experience for all new students, that some students have that if they come in and say in music or in fine arts, for example, they're kind of cohorted, they have a kind of similar experience. But students coming in, say doing a Bachelor of Arts degree, if they don't know their major necessarily at the beginning, they may not have a sense of community yet. And so what we wanted to do was incite a passion for learning, allow students to see the potential for university study at Mount Allison, and build a sense of community with some common experience. So this would be a course based on a chosen theme that might change every year. So these would be big themes that would be of interest to students, things that students care about. You know, climate change is one that's been tossed around, and would expose students to a range of perspectives and disciplines and ways of looking at the world, ways of approaching that problem or whatever problem is going to be presented. And that's the idea, is to see if we can actually accomplish this, you know, in groups of smallish groups, you know, 30 students, maybe 30 to 40 students, all kind of tackling the same thing, same kind of curriculum together, with a bunch of different professors who are really interested in contributing to this. And we know that the distribution system we have, the distribution requirements are kind of meant to do this, right? It's the idea with those is to provide some breadth and expose students to different, you know, disciplines and ways of looking at the world. But my hunch is that it's not exactly accomplishing this, and this is fairly common to universities across the sector, because I think what happens is students probably choose a kind of path of least resistance through them. You know, I have to get my science credit, so I'm going to take one of these 2 courses that the science faculty are offering to satisfy this, or something like that. And often they wait until their later years to complete. And the idea is that you should have this experience at the beginning. You should really be hooked on to different disciplines and different ways of learning and thinking about the world right from the very beginning. So could this be an alternative to that? That's another question. But that's the idea. That's what we're kind of working on now. This was presented to the Faculty Council a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of excitement about this. So it was perceived very positively. A lot of faculty, you know, were interested in participating in this. So really trying to get a sense of what the students think of it, what you think of this kind of idea, and what you think about our current system, the distribution requirements in your degrees, and how they're working for you or not. And I'd be happy to get your feedback and bring it back to the working group to help to develop this this plan. That's all I have to say. I don't really have a formal presentation beyond the document you have in front of you, but I'd be really happy to hear your ideas, and I'll write them down and bring them back.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Hennessy. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this proposal? Go ahead, Councilor Minoka McKinney.
Thank you. Yeah, just to start off on this little discussion here to give some feedback. Yeah, I really like this proposal, this first year foundational course, especially how it is really getting the idea of distribution, at least to me, a bit more of exploring how different faculties look at things, exploring what like how different disciplines go at different topics. That's something that I really thought that this course was interesting. Like you mentioned, like for example, climate change, that can be looked at so many different lenses and so many different ways. And at least from the current distribution system right now, I don't at least get as much of the like, oh, we can take one topic and see how it's different for so many different faculties and so many different disciplines. So that's one thing I really like about this proposal, and especially for it to tackle contemporary issues. That's really something that I'd like to see highlighted in it, like issues on EDI. You mentioned climate change, current issues, so that not just like it's a way for students to look at some of these big issues or big topics, but also educate them about the topics at the same time. And yeah, so that's all I have to say, but thank you for your presentation.
Great, thank you for sharing. So we have quite a few questions, so I'm going to go in the order that I received them. So we're going to start with Councilor Kruger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Hennessy, for bringing this before us today. I just also wanted to voice my support for it. I think it'll be especially useful for first generation students to be cohorted with students and just get introduced to, you know, an academic framework that they may not be, you know, familiar with prior to. I do have a question just about, so just at the bottom under options, so the course could replace distribution requirements or could lead to different distribution credit systems. If it were to replace distribution requirements, is the idea that it would kind of, you could like pick a course. So for instance, if you were an art student and you needed 2 science distributions, it would replace like 1 science distribution, or is the goal and the focus to kind of use it to pioneer a new framework for distribution altogether?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I'll just comment and then answer that question. I think the first generation student issue, I think that's a really good point. And part of what I didn't detail in what I was speaking about was that part of this course would also be around campus literacy and preparation for academic studies. So instead of having, you know, a 1-day learning day, you know, orientation where students learn everything they have to learn about, you know, how to succeed in university, that we might take the first week or 2 weeks of this course to lay down some, you know, various campus literacy and study skills as part of it. So that this would become part of that course as well. And with the distribution, I'm not sure how this would play out in terms of what we're proposing to is to pilot the course in the fall and then sort of measure it and see how it goes and what the students think of it. My idea is that it would kind of replace the distribution system that we have right now and then allow for some more flexibility within the students' degrees. So instead of taking those, you know, those requirements that you have to take, that it opens up more possibilities to take different types of courses that may satisfy a breadth requirement. So maybe some structure around that, saying you have to take another 12 hours outside of your, you know, outside of your faculty or something like that. There's lots of different ways to do it. But instead of a kind of an arbitrary take 6 hours from this and 6 hours from this and 6 hours from this course would satisfy the idea of exposing people to different disciplines. And then maybe that allows you to point towards different subject areas that you're interested in. You know, with the idea, like if we take climate change for, you know, as a theme, for example, there's some obvious disciplines that I think, you know, would fit into that, obviously environmental science and public policy, for example. But there's also things like sociology. There's classics like the idea of, you know, of sort of divine intervention versus human engagement with the world. There's storytelling, you know, English, science fiction. Like there's lots of ways to approach a problem like that exposes students to different ways of thinking about things. And I just think it will make stronger students as they progress through their program. So my idea is that it may actually replace the need for the distribution system. Whether we actually do that or not, I think that we'll have to figure that out after we test it.
Great, thank you for that question, Councillor Kruger. Now we're going to move on to Councillor Lesser.
Hi, Dr. Hennessy. Thank you again. Thank you again for coming and talking to us today. I had 2 questions about the proposal. The first of which was that in the options section, you suggest that senior students could be used as discussion session members, which I imagine is similar to kind of how the START program is currently set up, where we have students running our sessions. Would you consider that like a teacher's assistant, like a TA position? Or would that just be kind of like a volunteer position? And the second question that I had is, as of right now, START is a faculty-specific program, at least for the arts and science program. So my science START session is for science students. Did the working group discuss the possibility of doing this as a faculty-specific thing? And I'm interested in, if you guys did, like kind of what came out of that discussion.
Thank you for the question, sir. Yeah, through the chair, I'll just respond. The idea of using senior students, we hadn't really figured out how that would work, whether it would be a typical TA type experience. Could it be, you know, a senior course that students take that are, you know, that they get credit for, you know, to be part of this kind of thing? I mean, there's lots of different ways of accomplishing that. So the proposal that I think will come as part of the academic plan is that we strike a working group, a steering committee to design the course and figure out all these kind of details. But there's, I think there's a lot of merit to pairing new students with senior students who have had the same experience. I think that would be something that would make the course a lot better. As for faculty specific, no, the idea was that it would be a more of a universal experience. That said, there are certain things that we're doing that work well, like START works really well. So it wouldn't necessarily have to replace START if that was something that that needed to kind of happen. We're trying to do a similar thing in social sciences and in arts this year, but it's obviously had some real success in science. So we don't want to mess with anything that's been successful. That said, if we can incorporate it into the course and it's actually going to be successful for everybody, then we would do that too. So a little bit more details, I think, to be determined. Right now, we're at the stage of determining whether this is something we want to do or not. Thank you for the question.
Great, thank you so much. Great question, Councillor Lesser. Moving on down the list to Councillor Nolan. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My question was addressed as well.
Lovely, love when that happens. Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Nolan. So moving on to Councillor Robinson, I believe.
There's a few questions in the chat, Claire, and as well that I think are ahead of that. And I think Nadine said that her question was answered.
Yes, I just saw that. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm keeping order of them when I saw them. So I saw the hands up first. They were up before the comments in the chat. So we're going to move on now to Councillor Blakeney.
All right, thank you very much. Hi, Dr. Hennessy. I do have a quick question regarding, would it be something that would be considered to have a course such as this run for 2 semesters, like to be a 6-credit course just as opposed to a 3? And I'm just wondering, perhaps one could be geared towards maybe like a science basis, and then, or the next one in the next semester could be geared towards an arts basis, I guess, so people would have the potential to cover 2 different aspects if they would so choose, or just, like I said, make one that's kind of all-encompassing for an entire year. And I do think it is very good. I think I had mentioned this before regarding allowing senior students to be discussion session mentors or what the case may be. Speaking as an upper year student, I think that's fantastic. There's a lot of students that can use that for experience in terms of like some want to become teachers, working with young youth. Like it's valuable experience that they can add to a resume. And the last question that I do have, besides like a full credit thing, if that would be considered, would be in a distribution credit system where you had mentioned at the bottom like embedded certificates and such. There's a lot of certificates that are kind of assembled now. I'm just wondering if there's going to be flexibility, or I know that's been, certificates has been coming up quite a bit in planning committee, but is there going to be systems that are in place to allow for variation and flexibility to exist going forward with certificates? Because I know there's a lot of people that have taken very similar courses. Let's say if you take the diversity, equity, and inclusion certificate, that they may have not taken something in sociology, but they've taken something. Let's say I took an anthropology that has almost the exact same title and same description, but in order to kind of facilitate linking things up. Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you, Councillor Blakeney. I really do love your ambition. Yes, that would be great if we could do 6-hour credit eventually. I think the idea with this is to start a little smaller. Although I sort of think like you, why not go big? But I think starting smaller would be more palatable, I think, for a lot of the faculty who are still testing this kind of idea out, although they're very interested in it. So I think that would be a good idea to eventually figure out if this could be a 6-credit type of course or two courses. And it could be that one more general and then one more kind of discipline faculty specific, or just a longer course that had two different themes. There's lots of different ways to do that. So, so I think you're on to something there in terms of expanding it. But I think the idea is to start with it, 3 credits and see how it kind of works. Get everybody excited about it. It will be very faculty intensive. We'll have to have a number of different faculty participating in this in order to keep the classes small. And so that requires a lot of programs to adjust some things. If a faculty member is going to teach in this course, they wouldn't teach another course in the program. So that stuff still has to be worked out. I forget the second question. Oh, about the certificates. Yes. So as you know, because you're part of the working group on credentials and programs, certificates is something that we have been discussing, both with the idea of standalone certificates that could be done either as post-grad or just as a certificate somebody could come to Mount Allison and take. But with the embedded certificates, we know that there's a lot of them that students pursue, that they're definitely value added to the degree. They provide a nice credential in addition to the degree, but they're not completely organized right now. And so as part of the that working group, one of the recommendations is to do an inventory of those certificates, figure out what the pathways to completions are for them, how difficult they are to complete, and to your point, to see how many students are nearing completion of them without even knowing. And then, maybe it's a course substitution here or one more course here that they could complete it, and figuring out a better way to advise around them. So they're a little bit right now kind of done in a sort of ad hoc manner, where some students who know about them do them, other students who don't know about them might be doing them and they don't even know. So we want to try and clean all of that up. Thank you for the question.
Great question, Councillor Blakey. Now I have a question from Councillor Jadah, but he is unable to turn on his microphone, so I am going to ask it for him. The question is, how accommodating would the course be for international students, as liberal arts is already a new concept for many of them? And what concepts would be introduced in the course to make the academic transition better for international students? Comment, I love this initiative and looking forward to see how it works out.
Thank you, Councillor Jadah. I think that's a great question. I think that's actually one of the real reasons why we want to do the campus literacy academic orientation part of it in a little bit more of a meaningful way, to get students kind of all more or less, on the same page, so that they can start in an equitable way towards success. So I think it actually would make it a lot better for international students if that wasn't just sort of packed into a international orientation or an academic orientation day, that we're being a little bit more mindful and a bit slower with the easing in. And I think if all the students were having the same common experience, then a lot of those kind of issues might get addressed in that kind of environment, rather than, okay, you're done your orientation, now let's have at it, and everybody's on the same page. And I'm not sure that works so well. Now an interesting question will be, one of the things that we're also talking about is, should we have online course experiences available for international students as a kind of bridging from where they are to coming to Mount Allison? If that's the case, would this be a course they get after they come here? Probably. But there would need to be some sort of orientation for academic success that would happen in an online way as well.
Awesome, great. Very informative question. Now we're going to move on to Seamus Tobin, who indicated a question.
Yes, hi. Two-parter. One, would this be an optional course for students to enroll in, or would it be mandatory? And second, how much would this course cost? Would it be the same cost as any regular 3-credit course that's offered at Mount Allison?
Yeah, the idea is it would be mandatory. It would be part of every degree program. So you'd have to complete it. And ideally you complete it in the first year. What we would, the idea is you just enroll all new students into the course, and it would be part of the regular tuition structure. So it wouldn't cost any extra.
Great. Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was just, and sorry if it was already addressed, whether or not this course would be graded or whether it'd be a pass-fail course.
Through the chair, what a fantastic question. Don't know. I mean, ideally, I think it would be pass fail, because that would be that would allow students to really engage in the course without without that kind of concern about there's 20 different graders in the course, and one section has a different grading system, and that whole thing I think would be neutralized. So I would prefer it to be a pass fail, but again, that has to kind of get worked out. Another one of the working groups is working on grading and assessment, as you know, and there's different opinions about that. I guess the downside towards it not having a grade would be that when students are applying to postgrad or having a pass on their transcript. But I think if it's the first year foundation course, I think most most professional schools and postgrad schools will get it, that is. So I think it would be a better course done as a pass fail, but pass meaning you have to complete a certain number of things. So pass not necessarily being 50%, but being, okay, these are the competencies, these are the experiences that you have to have in order to complete it. And we're really looking at a range of experiences. So exposing students obviously to some of the normal things that they would go through in other courses. So, readings and discussions and things like that, but also pieces of music and common book experiences, some kind of service learning component, experiential component, exposing everybody to the different ways of learning. And so I think because of all of that, because of the breadth of different learning experiences, it lends itself a little bit better, I think, to a pass fail. But again, that has to be kind of worked out. Great question, though.
Great. So we have more questions. Love it. Next, Councillor Blakeney.
Just one more very quick question. Has this been attempted in any other local universities? And is this something that's been proposed by the Maple League itself? And kind of what was the success around it if it has been posed or tried?
So through the chair, I'll just, that's an interesting question. So the Maple League has not done anything like this as far as I know. St. FX has they have some interesting cohorting options that students can take, but it's certainly not a universal thing for all students. And in Canada, generally, there's not a whole lot of experiences like this. In the US, there are a lot of liberal arts colleges that do things like this. They have a kind of core program that all students take. And it's more than one credit. Sometimes it's an entire first year, and it's kind of like this, a small groups dealing with big issues, sort of like distribution, but it's done really with a real mindfulness and real sort of thoughtfulness towards it. So, and this is I've been in discussions about this before. When I was at Acadia as a dean, I led a discussion that was trying to create something like this. We never could kind of make it work, but I think Mount Allison is the place where it could work really well. So I don't have a whole lot of examples in the Canadian context of how this kind of thing could be successful. My hunch is, though, that any kind of exemplar that I would be able to deliver would differ anyway, because Mount Allison's a little bit unique. It's like Acadia, it's like St. FX, it's like Bishops, but it's different too. It's smaller, so we can accomplish things a little bit more differently, a little bit better, I think. I think it's a different kind of level of student that comes to Mount Allison. So there's something that I think we can do here, and I often, I want to bring in comparators, and then I think, well, that's not really a good comparison because we're kind of unique. It's not like there's a lot of schools like us. So not a great answer to the question, but I don't think there's a whole lot of data that I can provide as an example.
Okay, so up next is Councillor Keller, and we'll return to that comment in the chat in a moment. So Councillor Keller, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question pertains to the relationship of this course to transfer credits. Say, for example, a student comes in with IB credits and comes in with a second year standing. Would they still be required to take this course, or would they have an exemption, or just kind of, what would that relationship be there?
Wow, that's a great question. My sense is they would have to take it, that it would become part of the Mount Allison degree experience. And as a similar, when I was at Acadia in the music program, we created a course that no other music school had created. We called it Playing and Hearing Music. And it was kind of like this. It was a foundational music course that had a whole range of things we were trying to address. and we'd get transfer students, and there was just no comparator that would that we could transfer in. Now they'd transfer other credits in, but this one everybody had to take because it really was kind of a unique thing. So unless we found another university that offered a similar thing to this, then we would we'd probably require all students to take it.
So we have two comments in the chat that are kind of on a related topic from Seamus Tobin and Councillor Hanikowski. I don't know if you can see the chat there, but I can read it aloud. Seamus says, so since this is mandatory, is a 3-credit course and built into the tuition structure, a student would still essentially be paying over $900 for this course. And Councillor Hanikowski is also worrying about an explanation for the associated cost of this course.
Yeah, it would be like any other required course in a degree program. So some of your courses are required, some of them are electives, required courses, and electives, they cost the same amount in terms of if you're a full-time student. So this would become one of the required courses. It would displace other required courses, but yeah, that's how that would work.
And another comment from Councillor Kraus.
Yeah, you kind of articulated what I was going to say, Dr. Hennessy. I think, if you're thinking about paying for this course, it's not as though it's, an extra cost, right? Like we kind of mentioned early on in this presentation, it could hypothetically replace, a distribution credit. So it's not that you would perhaps be paying $900 on top of your additional courses that you need to take. It could be used like in replace of a course. So it wouldn't be an additional fee, which I think is important to note.
That's right. It won't become a 123-hour degree program or something where you have to pay an extra $900. It's still a 120 credit degree. And then this would become one of those 120 credits, or 3 of those 120 credits.
Councillor Tobin, would you like to make that comment? Please indicate if you would like to make the comment aloud.
Yeah, I just don't know why we're being asked to spend the money on this course by making it mandatory. Why not just let us take any other course, instead make this optional so we don't have to, so we can spend the money on something that we'll actually learn.
Yeah, I guess that's agree to disagree on what you actually would learn in terms of, academic skills. To me, it's a good value for a required course. And that's kind of, part of what we're trying to figure out is what is going to give the students the best foundation for success, not only in the degree program, but in the rest of their life. So, you may have a perspective that you like to choose only the courses that you want to take, but that's part of what we do as faculty, is figure out what are the courses that we think you need to take in order to be successful, both in your degrees and in the rest of your lives. And so that's why we do what we do.
Councillor Blakeney, do you still have a comment?
Yeah, I do have a comment kind of regarding that last comment. I'm not trying to, just to offer a different opinion and not to attack it in any way. But I do think that it would be important to consider with regard to this foundational course that it would be still centered around something that would be useful and tangible. Like Dr. Hennessy said, whether it be like environmental action or whatever the case may be, there would be a core component that students are able to study and put forth. I mean, I've been here 8 years, and I can think of myself, when I started my first year, I remember half the class receiving their first essay back, which was my first essay that I received. And half the class had a lecture from this professor explaining that we all technically either misrepresented on the essay or directly cheated and broke policy in terms of academic integrity. And nothing was purposeful, but people did not know how to cite properly. Simple things like this that can have huge repercussions down the line are pretty well quintessential. So addressing these small little nuances very early on, not only, would you be addressing a core topic of dealing with, a scientific issue or an art issue or whatever the case may be, whatever the class would be structured around, it would allow you to be mentored in a more one-on-one basis, I think, of, hey, don't plagiarize. This is how you cite. This is how you can reference something. This is actually how you carry out study. And if I had this option 8 years ago, I would be, I think, very fortunate. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
All right. Counselor Lester, go ahead.
Dr. Hennessy, you referenced universities in the United States that have similar programs to something like this, you know, a core liberal arts education. I'm from the United States. A number of my friends actually are at liberal arts universities in the United States. And one of the most common complaints that's heard from those campuses is that distribution systems and like the elongation of the education actually makes school less accessible just financially for people because they have to take what some, again, they are not necessarily irrelevant, but what some people feel are irrelevant courses. So I wonder how the working group I wonder how the working group would be able to make this feel like it really is, you know, like to be able to counter comments like this is just an extra cost, because I do think there is educational value, especially in, you know, the addressing the academic skills, but also in a central, you know, learning about one thing program. It's just a matter of countering the possibility of like, oh, this could have been a training program, or why am I paying for this? Which are, I think, would be major concerns of the people that I represent. But also, I know that this is an early proposal, and I'm sure there's a lot more, you know, focus grouping and talking to people that will happen before this is formally made into something. So I'm sure those will come up in those things. I just wanted to, in regards to the examples of United States education, bring up like the inaccessibility that a lot of that creates.
Great. We are kind of getting to a point maybe a bit where we're starting to talk in circles. So I'm kind of maybe going to close the conversation. Those that have indicated comments will get through the rest. But unless you have like a super pressing question to something that somebody brings up, we'll just kind of go through these maybe a little bit more quickly. So Councillor Robinson, go ahead.
My comment was more or less just echoing what Councillor Blakeney so eloquently put, but I was just going to say that I feel there is a lot of value added in this course. Not to completely dispute any previous comments, but I think it's incredible. I think it would, I know if I had this course, it would have likely saved me redoing a course that I had to redo last semester. Because I didn't do very well and I didn't have these foundational skills last year, even in my third year. So I think I really could have benefited. And I think a lot of other students who I know personally who have had to redo courses or gotten not so great grades in those courses would have really benefited from a course like this. And I think it's a really, really fantastic opportunity that I would have loved to have had in my own year. So I'm grateful that future students will likely get to have it.
Great. Next, we have Councillor Minoka McKenney. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, well, first I kind of just want to address to like thanking the students at large who wanted to put in their comments about this proposal as well. This is why stuff like this happens, so more eyes can get on it, more feedback can come in. Now, even though necessarily the comments, I don't necessarily agree, because I see this as like could be a really unique Mount A experience with a lot of things that other universities don't offer, but did want to address how actually it's a question for you, Dr. Hennessy, if how like feedback from faculty has been about scheduling this into especially programs that are tight in first year for courses. I could name off some, but there's some that are very tight schedules, and what like faculty might be thinking about how this could fit in, or if this is a concern for them.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could answer that question, I think this actually would in some ways relieve a little bit of that, because I mean, part of the issue right now is that if everybody has to take these distribution requirements, one of the challenges people have are fitting them in, right? If you have requirements, and particularly science students, if you have a bunch of scheduled labs, then you're always trying to fit in these other courses around that. And this would make a little bit more deliberate attempt to schedule these for students. So this, for example, one model could be that this could be a course that takes place all at the same time, every section's at the same time, and no other courses are scheduled at that time. Boom, we don't have any conflicts anymore. And in terms of degree requirements, it wouldn't be an additional degree requirement, right? It actually would replace what is already a degree requirement, so some part of the distribution system. So if it replaced all the distribution credits, all of a sudden that's a lot more flexibility built into a degree. Now, obviously, if it was an addition to that, that makes it a lot more challenging. So we wouldn't want to do that. We want to make it so that it's not adding to the already onerous degree requirements that we have in some programs, but actually maybe replacing some of them. So I actually think it would actually work better for most departments. The challenging thing that, to be honest, that the programs and departments are going to have is that they're going to have to figure out what course they wouldn't offer in order for a faculty member from that department to be able to teach in this course. That's going to be the main issue. But my hope is that this rotates through. We have different faculty members who are excited to teach this, and so, or with not needing to have as many distribution requirements, it might replace some of the ones that departments were thinking of phasing out anyway, and then this would kind of replace that. So again, lots of things to work out with it, but I think that the scheduling thing wouldn't be as big a deal as the actual staffing of it.
Good question. Councillor Fuzezi, you have a comment as well. Go ahead.
Sorry, the left side of my computer is still acting up. My comment is, I'm just going to go really quickly because I am also just mainly reiterating what Councillor Robinson and Councillor Blakeney have already been saying. I think this is a lovely initiative. I think it's amazing. I think, as Councillor Robinson put it a while ago, I think if I had this as a first year, it would have helped me a lot. And I also think that it would encourage students to reach out to their professors more. And from a science point of view, I'm a biology major. I think it would also encourage students to reach out about research opportunities, research experience, and get to know their professors more. And I think that's all what's amazing about the Mountain experience. So great work. I think it's amazing. And yeah, super exciting.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanikowski, would you like to say your question aloud, or would you like to have me read it off for you? I remember your microphone wasn't working great earlier. Okay, awesome. I will read it out. So Councillor Hanikowski asks, when and by whom will it be decided which course this foundational would replace? I'm assuming that's referring to distribution courses.
Yeah, thank you. So through the chair, I'll say that in the pilot version of this, we'll have to figure out, because Senate is eventually going to pass this academic plan, and in the academic plan, it will make a recommendation for a pilot version of this course, and then how that will impact other course requirements. So at the moment, the proposal is that it would replace the distribution requirements for students coming in that year. And that would be approved by Senate. Now that might not be approved. It might be that it replaces one of the distribution requirements or something like that. So it'll have to depend on what the final version of the plan is, and that'll be approved by Senate. Eventually, if the course is successful and it gets adopted permanently, then again, it would be Senate that would decide on what this would replace.
Great. So now we have a question from Councillor Meisner. She asks, what is the statistical success of the START program thus far? By which I mean, what is the satisfactory rate of the course and the amount of students who have stuck with it? As these are great similarities between these two programs, just kind of looking for more information on START.
Thanks, Councillor Meisner. This START is extraordinarily successful. It's a wonderful program, and I don't know what the exact statistical evidence is, but from everything that I've heard, it's something that we definitely want to find some way to keep and expand, because we're trying to figure out how we can do it in the other faculties as well, because it's been so successful.
Great. And Councillor White asks, how will this affect degrees that do not have distribution requirements?
It would just replace an elective.
Okay. I think we are now kind of concluding on questions and comments. Thank you so much, Dr. Hennessy, for coming and presenting this new initiative. I hope that the discussion was beneficial for you, and there's lots to take back to your working team, I hope. A lot of positive comments in the chat, so that's great to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the rest of the council. And I will take back your comments. Most of them I think are positive, and reflect that back to the working group. And we'll see how this kind of progresses. But I'm encouraged by your feedback today. So thank you very much.
Great. Awesome. So now we are going to move on to our next point in the agenda, which is our reports. So we are going to begin with Councillor Burke. Please take it away.
Yeah, hi everyone. First off, I'm just gonna say, sorry, I'm like in the lab and the lights might turn off. I got stuck in the rain and I didn't feel like walking home because I'm tired, and yeah. So I guess I'll just say, for those of you that don't know, we had our council training today. I think it went quite well. Obviously not the format that we intended with kind of an online session, but I think we made the best with yeah, I think we made the best with what we had. And I'm really happy that our council is now hopefully up to speed a little bit more and able to really engage and participate this year. The only other thing I'll add, I think, to my report is that I took back Councillor Kruger's question last week about the library and the Gracies. And why there is differences in kind of mask use there. And I have been, see, this is what I'm talking about, the lights turned off. If you give me 2 seconds, I can turn them back on, sorry. There we go. I'm so sorry. And just the need for consistency is kind of what I echoed in the COVID working group, and they all agree. And they've asked the librarians to allow students to be able to take off their masks, at least to eat and drink. And when they're sitting down, they don't really see a need to have them on all the time. But if it progresses to be an issue past the next couple of days, please send me an email and I'll bring that back to the working group, because it's something they're keeping an eye on, and they want to ensure that that's also being followed in the library, is that students are allowed to eat and drink in there. Yeah. And then the big thing that I will say, even though COVID testing, the rapid kits being picked up, I'm so sorry, has already passed. The MBSA and the MASU is both working on a letter to send to the government and public health, pushing for additional rapid tests and them being offered on campuses to any student, regardless of vaccination status. So currently they're only being offered, or they're mandatory for students who are unvaccinated, but we want them to be offered to any student who is asymptomatic and just worried, to alleviate some of the kind of stress off of the PCR testing system. And other than that, the MBSA got a new mission and vision, was just approved. And Clara, I was wondering if you, oh, sorry, Chairperson, I was wondering if you had that and if I'd be able to show that as well. I can circulate that in with the next package. It just got missed in this one, but that is a-okay. But I would love to share it with you all if it's possible. Awesome. Okay, yeah, there it is. So people who were at council training would have already seen this, but it's really exciting and a big kind of organizational hooray for the MBSA. So it's very similar to our old mission and vision, but we brought it to our EDI committee and they took our mission and vision and worked on it And this is what they presented back. And this is what was approved. Our new strategic plan was also approved for the next 3 years. I just don't have the final copy of that ready to share with you folks, but when it is, I will attach it just in the appendix of my next report. And then as well, we've had 3 policies get passed in the last week. One on international student loans, like trying to get at international students access to New Brunswick student loans. One on post-secondary funding from the government. And a third on eliminating interest on provincial student loans. So I'm going to ask that the executive director of the MBSA come to present those policies, our new strategic plan, and our advocacy document that we're going to bring to MB Ledge in November, later this term, probably also in November, to kind of give you some updates there. So yeah, that will end my report, other than questions and comments, I think.
Great. If anybody has any questions, please indicate so in the chat or let me know. For those of you that this might be your first council meeting, after every report, we kind of take a little pause so that you can direct your questions to the presenter. Just to clarify if anybody had any questions.
I'm also so sorry. I just really wanted to highlight that MBSA committees are open, and you can all apply if you're interested. So this is the first time ever the MBSA is opening up our committees to any student at large across our 4 member institutions. And these committees directly create policy and that we use to advocate to the New Brunswick government and MLA. So it's a really big opportunity if you have like provincial advocacy items. Yeah, I think, is there a question in the
Yes,
chat?
there is a question from Councillor Hanikowski. Please go ahead.
Hi, is this working now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you for your report. I was just wondering, I just wanted to clarify about the COVID section. I'm just confused. Is it now the case that only when you're eating and drinking in the library sitting down that you can remove your mask, or is whenever you're sitting at a table working?
Yeah, so like what it was previously was they asked that people kept masks on at all times. And this was because the library staff had indicated that was what they felt comfortable with. However, this wasn't consistent with what was happening across campus, which was students are allowed to take off their masks when they're seated. So they've asked that the library kind of instill the same like rules throughout the library. So when you're sitting, you're able to take it off, or at the very least that students are allowed to sit and eat and without their masks, and they might be encouraged to keep them on, but they are allowed to take them off in 100%, like, and it's encouraged that they are allowed to also eat and drink in the library. So I guess the hope is that when students sit down, they'll be able to take off their masks as well. But if that is a big issue, please send me an email and I will bring it up with the COVID working group and they can speak with the librarians again.
Great. Does anyone
Thank
have
you.
any other questions? Oh, yes, lovely. For Councillor Burke or comments? Okie dokie. So we are going to now move on to Councillor Minoka McKenney. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, essentially with my report, I'll just do quick highlights, be very brief. So with Nimbus, promotion has been happening a lot. Different promotion than what happened during orientation, but still promotion. I included in my report a very brief like overview kind of about how the stats for the app is doing, but I will note to everyone, take those numbers with a grain of salt. I wasn't going to go into full like statistical analysis or anything. It's just an indicator about how the numbers are kind of doing this year, but how significant they are, I don't know, or how much is like actually representative. Like just take it like that. An example, one of the big numbers, 129% increase. That was from 24 students to 55. So just because it was small numbers, it was a big percentage. And then also give a little overview about the future for Nimbus and brought up some concerns about the administrative portal. That is probably going to be the biggest barrier for Nimbus continuing in the future at Mount A. Then Senate indicated there, not too much that I really need to highlight there, except for one really cool thing that's happening. Again, for those who remember the academic advocacy document for the year that was presented in summer council, and also to new counselors that will be presented at next council. I forgot this one, but the scholarships and bursary committee is going to be meeting. An estimate for the last time they met was maybe 10 years ago, maybe 5. We don't know. No one was here. So that was a direct recommendation from our advocacy document. And yeah, I'm really happy to see that happening. And Councillor Kruger to be able to attend that meeting. And Councillor Kruger has also been doing work to push to get that committee to meet finally. But I'm really happy that that's going to be happening. President Speaker Series, it said there. And then OER project, that is the like professional school preparatory tests, open educational resources. Still trying to figure out a name for that. But essentially the logistics are all done for it. I just need to come up with a name and promote it and collect textbooks. But like that's going to be a great project to get going. It's going to offer free resources to students to get ready for professional schools. And yeah, I'm really excited about that one. And then additional items there that I won't mention too much, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much for that overview. That was great. Does anyone have any comments or questions pertaining to anything that Councillor Minoka McKenney touched on in this report? All right, if there's no questions, then we will move on to Councillor Ehlert. Councillor Ehlert, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much. There isn't really anything else I want to mention. Again, really excited that we have the #1 Get Out the Vote campaign. I know I said that already earlier on today, but I'm quite proud of it. It turned out really well and a lot of students were engaged. So really excited that the MassU kind of claimed that title, so to speak. The bike co-op is now closed for the season. Stay tuned for the snowshoe co-op, which will be starting once the snow falls. And we are in the middle of an off-campus living 101 campaign. So stay tuned to MassU's social media about that. And the only other comment, Councillor Burke already touched on it, the MBSA committees. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. The due date to apply is October 31st, and there's multiple committees that you can apply for. So I encourage you to take a look and see if there's anything that interests you.
Great. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Councillor Ehlert? Awesome. I see no questions or comments, so we are going to move on to Councillor Fuzesi. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just going to do this super quick. I do have a couple of clarifications on my report. Sorry, I wrote them down. I will start adding my overall surplus hours as I noticed that I only add my surplus since last council meetings. So my apologies for that. I also, just as a quick overview of what I've been doing. I do want to just give a couple quick shout outs. And if anyone has any questions about anything in my report, feel free to ask me them later. I do want to give a huge shout out to Counselor Jadah and Counselor White for their insight and help on the initiative for cultural appropriation awareness that we are hoping to launch for Halloween, as well as Counselor Penny for offering up help and insight as well. I could not be doing it without you, so thank you so much. And I also want to give a quick little clarification at the bottom of what I've been working on, following up on athletics, about the fitness hours that we're hoping to install, myself and Counselor Burke. I do want to apologize for the misuse of terminology. We had not yet cemented the demographic or what we were looking to title these hours as, but the demographic is for women and gender minorities. So my apologies for that. And I also want to give a quick shout out to Counselor Robinson, Counselor Nolan, and Counselor Penny for their help with the Clubs and Societies training. A lot of Clubs and Societies executives emailed to say that it was really helpful and a huge success. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's mainly it. I can't believe we're already in October. Super exciting. Thank you so much for all your support and help. So thanks so much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them whenever.
Great. Does anybody have any questions they would like to direct now to Counselor Fuzesi? Okay, if we have no questions or comments, then we are going to move on. Thank you so much. To Counselor Nolan.
Thank you. So not much more than this to touch on. I'd encourage people, and I put this in all of my reports, but nobody ever reaches out to me. Makes me sad about interest in the bylaws. And the second thing is an RBC sponsorship. I just mentioned 2 events that we're planning in the future. The committee appointments have been, at least the student committee appointments, student at large, have been finalized. So you should be hearing back about that within the next week, and they should be operating within the next 2 weeks. And then hiring and elections, this was just to say that they're complete, and that I wanted to thank Ian Richardson and James Piers, the CRO and HR manager, for their work on these items. And then I think bottom, scroll down a little bit. Thank you. TA research, that's something I mentioned in a prior report. That's going really well. I have a meeting with Dr. Pasco Deloya on Tuesday, and I had a BOR Finance and Admin meeting this Wednesday, and I have a BOR Investment Committee meeting, or past Wednesday, BOR Finance, BOR Investment this Wednesday. Mostly procedural stuff on the BOR Finance end, but I'll keep you updated on the investment. And that's really it. So I'm happy to field any questions.
Great. Thank you. I love the please that you put in your report. Somebody please send him a question or ask him one right now. Do we have any questions for Counselor Nolan?
I don't know if you can see, but I just had my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Counselor Minoka McKenney. I was looking in the chat. My apologies.
That's all good. I switched it up. Yeah, mine's more of a comment, but yeah, if like really counselors, especially new ones, please reach out to Counselor Nolan about the bylaws. I had the opportunity to see a bit of what's going on in the background on what's happening, and it's a well-needed update on our governance structure and how our governance is done. And there's a lot of great changes coming along, but with that, there needs to be lots of feedback and a lot of people looking at them. So yeah, really reach out. Even if it's just like, hey, maybe take a peek at anything. What do you think I could yeah. But also great job, Counselor Nolan, on your work on those. Lots of research went behind them, lots of writing, and yeah, I think they're looking great so far.
Great. Go ahead, Counselor Robinson, with your question.
Counselor Nolan, what kind of questions are you looking for? I know Counselor Minoka McKenney just touched on this, but are you looking for feedback on current bylaws and policies? Are you looking for folks to collaborate with you on making new ones? Sorry if this was mentioned above and I missed it, but maybe that would help direct folks to you if they had a more specific idea of what you're looking for. Or if it's just broad, that's fine too.
Yeah, it wasn't, sorry, Madam Chairperson, if I can speak. It wasn't questions, it was more so just like if you're interested and would like to help. I'm not a first year student anymore, and I'm also like come at it with a very specific lens. Someone who's been doing this for a couple of years, or not a couple of years, but a year. So as Rowan mentioned, my perspective may be pretty different than yours on the things. So it'd be nice just to get some, maybe the counselors, and it's a big part of your job too, more involved in this. So any collaboration is sort of appreciated. And some of you will be placed on the governance committee of finance and operations. So you get to see more in depth there.
Awesome. Lovely. Do we have any more questions for Councillor Nolan at this time? Okay. So now we are going to move on to our final report from Councillor Robinson. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. I know we've all been looking at a screen for a very long time today, so I'll try and make this as quick as possible. I think the biggest thing to highlight is that I am in point number 3, I'm looking for some feedback on the Mount Allison website. So not the Massey website, although I'm looking for feedback on that as well. This is less Massey related, but I am trying to work with Nadine LeBlanc for marketing to improve. There's not a whole lot about the Massey on the Mount Allison website, the new one, so I'm looking for student feedback on that so they can make it more comprehensive, more usable, and they're looking for feedback, whether that's comments or questions, or if you're thinking something's missing on that website, then please let me know in an email. That'd be really helpful, and then I can bring that to Nadine LeBlanc. Yeah, that's pretty much it, but I'd love to take questions if anyone has any.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Robinson on her report? Councillor Robinson, is there a forum or anything where somebody could put their maybe their thoughts on the website? Have you considered following that, or are you basing this on emails?
I was just thinking emails would be the best way, but if folks would like some sort of forum or survey, I can definitely send one out if that would be helpful, and if people have lots of feedback. I hadn't thought of that until now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, does anyone have a, okay, go ahead, Councillor Lesser.
Hey, I'm not sure exactly how to word this question, but are you looking for like general student feedback, or are you just generally trying to get like a group of people to like tear apart the website and find, you know, possible problems? Because to me, that feels like two different ways of getting feedback, where one of them is kind of just naturally collecting feedback from the student body, and the other would be like building a focus group of people to properly like dig into the website and try to find issues. So which one are you going for?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Lesser. Definitely just general feedback. That's all they asked for. They just asked for what the student opinion on the website is. So that is what I'm looking for. I think the meeting is going to be in about 2 weeks from now. Yeah, that was a really good question. Thank you. So just general feedback is what they've asked for.
All right, great question. Now we're going to move on to Councillor Hanikowski for a comment.
Hello. So I just had a question for Councillor Robinson, or a comment rather. I just wanted to state that in regards to what you just said, I think a survey would be a great idea. I don't know if more people would respond to that, but I would definitely like to fill out a survey if you have a few questions.
Absolutely, I can certainly send out an anonymous survey to the group. And I think that'd be really beneficial, so I can bring specific quotes and statements to the marketing department. Thank you for that, Councillor Hanikowski.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, Councillor Kruger, go ahead with your question.
Thanks, Chairperson Klein Connect. This is just a specific question about the, I just, you know,
went and visited the website. But this is, so I'm looking at the committee's like application form, and it says that the applications will open on September 4th and close on October 2nd. So does that mean like is that like a typo, or are the committee applications closed to students aside from counselors now?
Michael, do you want to take that? I believe that was your section of the website.
Yeah, I see
Or
Counselor Nolan nodding his head. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're closed. That's just a like the form just needs to be taken off. So thank you for that, and I'll take the form off tomorrow as soon as I get in.
Great. Counselor Burke, I'm assuming your point was also the response to that question. So if we have no further questions or comments, if so, please indicate now. Okay. So we are now going to move on to new business. So we have quite a few club constitutions, starting off with the African Students Association. Go ahead, Councillor Minoka McKenney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just looking at like time too, and I also too, please anyone correct me if I'm wrong. This is a rule in either Robert's rules or Benoit's, and I forget which one, so it could not even count here. But I wanted to motion that we pass the next constitution motions as a block, since they're all similar motions going forward, unless any counselors wanted to pull any of the constitutions out to vote on separately, just for sake of time, so we don't have to do 5 separate motions. Yeah, so I want to make that motion.
Go ahead, Councillor Burke.
I'll wait for a seconder maybe to see if there's even a point. Yeah.
Yep. Do we have someone to second? Thank you, Councillor
There
Nolan.
we go. Okay, cool. Yeah, there was just one constitution. I think it was the last one that I personally had a few questions about, because I noticed a few things that just weren't filled out. So I like the idea. I have a question specifically about the Student Soldier Society, I believe it is. So I'm wondering if maybe we could pull that one out of the motion and block the rest of them, if that would be an okay amendment, or we can continue that, and I can just ask the comment specific to that constitution. This is your cool funky Robert's rules that I have not familiarized myself with, so feel free to correct me.
So Councillor Burke, are you motioning for this amendment, or would you like to hear Councillor Minoka McKenney's comment first, just to clarify what you're asking here?
Yeah, I'm just, his comment.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Minoka McKenney.
Yeah, actually, if Councillor Burke does want a motion that, then wait, can I say, I think I can second a motion on my an amendment on my own motion, or just basically accept it. I'd be fine to pull it out if there's questions on it. Still, it would save us a bunch of time to pass 4 at one time if no councillors have any additional questions of them.
So Councillor Burke, are you motioning then for these amendments to just pass the first 4?
Yeah, my amendment would be if we could just block the first 4 together.
Okay, perfect. And Councillor Minoka McKenney, you second. Councillor Nolan. Sorry, Councillor Minoka McKenney, you seconded that as well then?
Yes.
Great. So does anyone have any comments on this block of the African Students Association, Esports, Mount A Constitution, Golf Club Constitution, and Islamic Society Constitution? Go ahead, Councillor Nolan.
Yeah, just more of a point. Can we make sure that when we actually have the motion in the minutes, it states the name of the 4 clubs?
Great, thank you for bringing that forward. So If we have no comments or questions on this motion to pass the African Student Association Esports Golf Club and
Point of
Islamic
order,
Society.
sorry, Claire.
Oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
we would vote to accept Rohan's motion to block them together, and then we would actually vote on that motion, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, that's correct.
you're right. You're right. I got a step ahead. Sorry. If you don't, we are going to vote on the amendment to the motion to block it as 4 rather than 5. So all those in favor indicate Y in the chat. All those against, an N for no, and abstain an A. Okay, so we have accepted the edit to the original motion. So now the motion on the table is for passing the 4 clubs. So does anyone have any comments on passing these 4 club constitutions? If we have no further comments or questions, then we will now take the motion to a vote to pass the African Student Association Esports Golf Club and Islamic Society. So indicate Y for yes, N for no, A to abstain. Great, so we have now passed these 4 club constitutions. So I'm seeking a motion now regarding the Student Soldier Association Constitution. So I'm seeking a motioner and a seconder to pass this so that we can open discussion. So Councillor Fusezi motions to pass the Student Soldier Association, and this is seconded by Councillor Nolan. Does anyone have any comments or questions on this constitution? Councillor Burke.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my only question or comment was that there is one part, like the waiver specifically, which I feel is quite important, that be signed, was not the waiver section, which was section 6. And then as well, I was just a little bit confused about the executive officers being both voted and hired by the looks of it. And yeah, my only, like, I think it's a cool club. It just doesn't, like, and there's only one, the thing that concerns me is that there's only one executive officer, and the signing officers didn't sign the waiver, which seems, yeah, I just was a little bit worried about like how fully like thought out or filled out this form was. And I know we don't need both signing officers in order to pass a club, but I wasn't sure if the waiver section was different, and yeah.
Councillor Fusezi, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Those are very, sorry. Those are very valid questions, and I did make sure to look at if this was still possible to pass, and it is still possible to pass, noting that the executive members do come in to sign the waiver once it is passed, and they, the exec members did not have their full exec planned out yet, which is why there's only one standing executive member, but they do plan to have more exec members once the club is passed. I hope these answer your questions.
If I'm okay to just respond, Madam Chair. Yeah, that was just kind of the clarification that I needed. As long as that's 100% filled out, then I'm, yeah, good, thank you.
Do we have any more questions or comments regarding the Constitution? So if there are no more questions or comments, we will take this to vote. So we are voting to pass the Student Soldier Association Constitution. So indicate Y for yes, N for no, A to abstain. This is just a reminder, if you vote to abstain, your vote is not counted in the total. So we only count the Y and N votes against one another. I don't know if that's been made clear before, but just so that you know when you're voting with an A, I'm not trying to sway you in any way, but just so you have more information.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I just,
Go ahead.
thank you. I'm not exactly sure what the proper way to do this is, but just for the help of the vice chair, just make sure that all those who are voting are counselors. And I believe early on in the meeting, there was an error when referencing who is and isn't a counselor. And so just let the minutes show that certain people making comments are designated as students at large or counselors. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I am aware. I appreciate that. So we have passed the Student Soldier Society Constitution with a majority vote. So I'm going to scroll back up to the agenda. I'm trying not to give everybody. Sorry, it's gonna have to just scroll really fast. Don't look if it like makes you dizzy. Anyways, we are going to move on to open forum. I don't really have any indications of anything for open forum at the beginning of this. But if you have anything for open forum, please indicate now. Alrighty, so now we're gonna move on to reminders. Does anybody have any reminders? Go ahead, Councillor Nolan.
Yeah, club and society funding, academic enrichment funding, and the Jessica Fraser Scholarship is now open, and well, it's been open, and it closes October 25th at 4 p.m. So direct your friends or anyone else to the website to apply for those.
Great, and I think it was Councillor Ehler next or Councillor Burke. It was pretty neck and neck. So I'm gonna ask Councillor Ehler to go first, please.
Sure, thank you so much. Just a reminder for the off-campus one-on-one campaign that tomorrow there is a session being held from 3 to 4:30 p.m. on Zoom by the Residential Tenancies Tribunal. They're otherwise known as the Rentalsmen in Fredericton. So this is not only for first-year students. If you've ever had challenges with a landlord, or you've had questions about a security deposit, or anything at all, I encourage you to attend. We had a session last year that was extremely informative. There's a button that you can access on the Massey website under off-campus housing. It's not actually there yet, but it will be tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that, and I encourage you all to attend.
Great. Thank you so much for that reminder. Councillor Burke, do you still have anything to mention, or are you good?
Yeah, not to totally overdo this one, but NBSA committees, I just really want to note it in reminders. You go to the NBSA website under how to get involved, and you have until October 31st to apply. So you would not be a counselor if you were sitting on these committees. You'd be a student at large, and any student at large from any school can apply. So tell your friends too. That's all.
Great, thank you so much for that. And Councillor Kraus, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate, there was a graphic shared on the Massey Instagram recently. I'm looking for some folks to write some letters to our lovely, lovely Northside neighbors at the Drew. You know, COVID's really affecting them disproportionately, and it's really upsetting, right? And those are some folks that are feeling a lot of isolation right now. So if you are looking to write a letter, I know a lot of us are quite busy, but perhaps if you'd like to share the word as well to write a letter, I can come to you, collect that at your earliest and easiest convenience, and those will be distributed.
Great, thank you so much for that initiative. Go ahead, Councillor Blakeney.
Yeah, this is just a general note too. I mean, it could be counselors or students in general, but I believe at the end of the month, October 31st is the last day which students can put a request in under Connect for the university general bursary application. So for any students that could be experiencing any financial hardship or things, there could be any duress, that's a good point to possibly look at before that expires. And I think Christian Major, our registrar, has sent out emails, but just a reminder.
Great, awesome. Does anyone have any other reminders? All right, I'm seeing no further reminders. We also have nothing for in camera this week. So that takes us on to adjourning this meeting. I'm seeking someone to motion to adjourn this meeting at 7:56 p.m. Thank you, Councillor Nolan. And thank you, Councillor Fuzesi, for seconding. Awesome, great day, everybody. I'm so glad on how well everything went with training and planning and our meeting tonight. So thank you so much for your attention, and I'll see you guys all in a few weeks.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks for all the feedback everyone gave too. Really appreciate it.